She slept holding her sniper rifle. By morning, the enemy was defeated. The mountain air was thin, sharp, and painfully cold. Up there, above the tree line, where even the wind sounded tired, an elite reconnaissance team lay hidden along a jagged ridge. Their camouflage blended perfectly into rock and shadow, their breathing slow, their eyes always scanning. They had been watching the valley for 17 hours. No movement, no chatter, no signs of life. But that didn't mean the enemy wasn't there. Because in places like this, silence was never peace. It was patience. Among the team, one figure stood out, not because she spoke, not because she moved, but because she didn't. She lay slightly apart from the others, wrapped in a thermal cloak, her body still as stone. Across her chest rested a long sniper rifle, cradled in her arms the way someone might hold something fragile or sacred. She was asleep, actually asleep. One of the operators glanced toward her and shook his head slowly. "She's out cold," he whispered. Another smirked faintly behind his scope. "Sniper's been staring at nothing all day," he murmured. "Guess boredom finally won." A third operator muttered quietly, "Still weird." Because it was weird. Most soldiers slept lightly in hostile territory, half awake, ready to move at the smallest sound. But she wasn't half awake. She looked completely gone. Her breathing was slow, even, peaceful, and that made them uneasy. Not because she was sleeping, but because she was sleeping holding her rifle, not loosely, not casually, tightly, like she trusted it more than anything else in the world. The team leader glanced at her through binoculars for a moment. His expression didn't change, but his mind noted the detail. In elite units, habits meant something. Every movement, every routine, every quirk usually had a reason behind it. Still, even for a sniper, this was unusual. "You ever see her do that before?" one of the younger operators asked quietly. The team leader lowered the binoculars. "No." Wind swept across the ridge again, rattling loose gravel down the slope. Somewhere far below, clouds drifted through the valley like slow smoke. Hours passed. Darkness slowly swallowed the mountains. One by one, the operators rotated watch shifts, adjusting scopes, checking radios, stretching stiff muscles. But every time someone glanced toward her, she hadn't moved. Same position, same grip, same calm expression. At midnight, one of them whispered again, "She even breathing?" Another leaned just slightly to check. "Yeah," he said, slow. The whisper came back, "Still creepy." But the team leader said nothing, because he'd worked with snipers before, and he knew something most people didn't. The best ones weren't restless. They were still. Not lazy still, not tired still, hunter still. Stillness learned from hours of watching prey without blinking. Stillness trained into muscle memory until even sleep couldn't shake it. And yet, even he had to admit, something about her was different. At 0300 hours, the cold reached its peak. Frost began forming on the edges of rifles. Breath turned into faint mist. Fingers stiffened despite insulated gloves. Still, she didn't move. Not once. The stars slowly wheeled overhead. The valley below remained silent. The enemy camp, somewhere hidden beyond the tree line, gave no sign of life. Eventually, the youngest operator whispered what everyone else had been thinking. "She's crazy." A few quiet nods. Because no normal soldier could sleep that deeply on Overwatch. No normal soldier could stay that still for that long. No normal soldier would rest like that. Unless she knew something they didn't. The team leader glanced toward her again, and for the first time that night, he frowned. Because suddenly, he wasn't wondering why she was sleeping. He was wondering what she was waiting for. The sky in the east began to pale. Morning was coming.
And by sunrise, every man on that ridge would understand exactly why the sniper had slept so peacefully. The first hint of morning crept across the mountains like a secret. The black sky softened into dark blue, stars faded one by one, the freezing wind eased just enough for the ridge to feel less like a blade and more like stone. Down in the valley, shadows began to separate from the ground, slowly revealing the shapes they had hidden all night. The team shifted quietly into full alert. Night was cover, dawn was exposure. One by one, operators adjusted their scopes and checked sight lines toward the tree line below. Radios were tested in silence. Safety switches clicked off. Muscles tightened, ready for movement. All except one. She was still asleep. Same position, same grip, same calm expression. The youngest operator glanced at her again, unable to help himself. "She hasn't moved," he whispered. No one answered, because now they had all noticed. Not a twitch, not a stretch, not even the tiny unconscious shifts people make when they sleep. Just stillness. The team leader studied her from the corner of his eye. He had seen discipline before, extreme discipline. But this was something else. Her breathing hadn't changed rhythm once. Her fingers hadn't loosened on the rifle stock. Even the frost that had settled lightly on her sleeve hadn't been disturbed. It was like she wasn't sleeping. It was like she was waiting. A faint glow spread along the horizon. Then she opened her eyes. No yawn, no stretch, no groggy confusion. Just open, alert, awake. The nearest operator stiffened slightly, caught off guard by how sudden it was. 1 second she looked completely gone. The next, her gaze was sharp and focused, scanning the valley with calm precision. She didn't speak. She didn't move much. She simply shifted her cheek slightly against the rifle stock and looked through her scope. The team leader watched carefully. "Morning," he said quietly. She didn't look away from the scope. 3 minutes, she replied. Her breathing was calm, measured, controlled. Her eye remained fixed on the valley below. Then she spoke. "Until they move." Silence. One of the operators blinked. Another adjusted his grip on his weapon. Because no one had seen anything yet, the valley still looked empty. Wind brushed the treetops. Mist drifted between trunks. Rocks sat motionless in pale morning light. Nothing moved. The youngest operator whispered what everyone else had been thinking. "I don't see." The team leader raised 2 fingers. Quiet. They waited. 30 seconds. 1 minute. 2. Still nothing. A few of them exchanged faint glances, not doubting her exactly, but unsure what she was seeing that they weren't. Then, her finger shifted slightly along the rifle frame, not to fire, to steady. Her voice came again, just over a whisper. "Now." At first, nothing happened. Then, the valley changed. A branch moved where there was no wind. A patch of earth shifted where ground should stay still. A shadow separated itself from a rock. Then another and another. Shapes. Human shapes. Camouflaged fighters rising slowly from concealed positions, emerging from brush, dirt covers, and natural rock blinds so carefully disguised that even trained observers hadn't detected them. Except her. The operator's eyes widened slightly as more figures revealed themselves. Armed, coordinated, organized. An entire enemy unit, hidden in plain sight. One of the SEALs exhaled under his breath. "How did you—" She spoke softly, still watching through her scope. "They breathe different when they're about to move." No one responded, because there was nothing to say to that. Down below, the enemy fighters began assembling quietly, unaware that high above them, a team of watchers had just spotted their entire formation. The leader looked at her again, really looked this time. She hadn't been sleeping peacefully. She had been resting confidently, because she already knew where the enemy was. And now, so did they. The leader's voice was low. "Targets confirmed," he said into comms. Behind his calm tone, something had shifted. Respect. Real respect. He glanced once more toward the sniper beside him, the one who had slept through the night holding her rifle like it was part of her. And suddenly, no one on that ridge thought she was crazy anymore. They thought something else. They thought she might be the most dangerous person there.
The sun had barely risen, spilling pale gold across the valley. Shadows retreated, revealing the enemy in full view. Rows of soldiers moving with quiet precision, their formation tight but unaware they had been seen. The team leaders signaled silently. Every operator adjusted position, eyes sharp, breathing controlled. But the real focus wasn't on them, it was on the sniper. She stayed perfectly still, rifle still cradled, her scope scanning, calculating. One subtle movement of her finger along the trigger, and the world below would change forever. The enemy continued assembling, oblivious. Radios whispered static, boots pressed soft dirt. The ridge above was silent, except for the faint wind and the heartbeat of the sniper team. One of the operators leaned closer to the leader. "We can take them from here," he said, nodding toward the valley. "We've got numbers, grenades." The leader shook his head. "Let her go first." They all understood. This wasn't just any sniper. She had waited, observed, and measured everything, from wind direction to breathing patterns, even to the rhythm of enemy shifts. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't impatient. She was a predator. Minutes passed, then she exhaled once, slow, controlled, and lifted her rifle sight to the first target. The shot rang out, crisp, instant, lethal. Down below, the first enemy soldier collapsed silently. Another followed, and another, each shot precise, surgical, as if invisible hands were picking off threats one by one. The team watched, astonished. Her rhythm was flawless, calm, efficient, almost serene. The enemy had no idea where the attack came from. Confusion rippled through their ranks. They sought cover, but the sniper had already calculated their escape routes. Every movement they made, she anticipated. Every reaction, she countered. The operators realized something incredible. She had spent the entire night not just holding her rifle, but memorizing the terrain, memorizing the enemy's habits, memorizing their weaknesses. Every crazy action they had judged was a plan, a silent, deadly plan. By the time the sun rose fully over the valley, the enemy formation was in disarray. Casualties spread across their lines, communications went silent, retreat became inevitable. The team leader let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. He looked at the sniper beside him, standing now, calm, breathing steady, as if she'd just woken up from a nap. "She's insane," one operator whispered, in the best way. The sniper lowered her rifle, scanning the valley one last time. Targets were neutralized, threat eliminated. Mission accomplished without chaos, without waste, without hesitation. The leader finally spoke, voice filled with quiet awe. "You slept holding your rifle, and by morning the enemy was defeated. That's insane and brilliant." She just smiled faintly, not proud, not boastful, just aware. A predator who knew she had won without needing anyone to notice. For the team, a single truth had become undeniable. The sniper they had thought was crazy had just taught them the difference between instinct and genius. The valley was quiet now. Smoke had cleared, dust settled, and the early morning sun revealed the full scale of what had happened. Enemy positions were abandoned, and the battlefield looked eerily calm, almost untouched, except for the ones who had been neutralized efficiently, without chaos, without unnecessary loss. The team slowly emerged from the ridge, rifles still in hand, scanning for any remaining threat. But all they found was the sniper, sitting calmly on a rock, her rifle resting across her lap. Her eyes were steady, her breathing slow, as if nothing had occurred at all.
One of the younger operators approached, unable to contain his awe. You slept all night like that?" he asked, his voice a mix of disbelief and admiration. She didn't look up immediately. Her eyes followed the contours of the valley, noting angles and positions one last time before replying. "Yes," she said simply. "I watch, I wait, I strike when the time is right." The team leader stepped forward, removing his gloves. His expression was serious, but beneath it was respect, deep, earned respect. "You just taught us something. Some people call it crazy, some people call it reckless, but what you did, that was pure skill, precision, patience, discipline." The sniper finally allowed herself a small smile, not boastful, just confident. Patience wins wars. Rushing leads to mistakes. Around them, the team gathered, inspecting their positions, checking for signs of remaining threats, but everyone's attention kept drifting back to her. The same soldier who had whispered crazy hours ago now looked at her with newfound respect. She didn't just hold her rifle, she owned the battlefield before we even fired a shot. The leader nodded, surveying the valley one last time. By morning, the enemy was gone, and it wasn't luck, it wasn't timing, it was her skill. That's all there is to it. The sniper carefully slung her rifle across her back, moving to help the team check on supplies and wounded allies. Even after everything, she returned to being a teammate, calm and professional. The younger operators whispered among themselves, still amazed. "I don't think I've ever seen anyone like her," one said. "Me neither," another agreed. "She's something else." The leader looked at the ridge, at the valley below, and then at her. "We'll remember this," he said quietly, "not just because the mission succeeded, but because of how it happened, the way you worked, the way you waited, the way you held your ground in every sense." She simply nodded, understanding that recognition was not necessary. Respect had been earned, silently, in the only way that mattered, by action. As the sun climbed higher, the team packed up, moving down the ridge with confidence. The sniper led the way, eyes sharp, rifle ready. Behind her, the operators followed, knowing that today they had witnessed a level of mastery few ever see. Some called it crazy, some called it fearless, but in truth, it was something far rarer. Patience, discipline, and instinct fused into a single mind, a sniper who slept holding her rifle and by morning defeated an entire enemy force without hesitation. The mountain remained quiet, the valley empty, and the legend of the sniper, calm, still, deadly, grew silently in the minds of everyone who had watched her that night.